Oh, a memoji.
Yeah. Because I put it on when Ishan was on the phone today.
Yeah.
And he was like, he first was like blank, and then Aditi started laughing and was like, oh, this is like VR. And then 2 seconds later, he was like, I don't like VR. I don't like VR. I don't want anybody. I don't want it VR. And I was like, okay, it's going away. And then like 90 seconds later, he was like, I just need VR. He doesn't know what he wants, this child.
Can he get his own? That'd be great. Would it be great?
He looks kind of like one.
He's already one.
I'm gonna make him one. Oh, that's such a good idea. I don't know if they're baby ones, because why would a baby be making them?
For his baby phone?
Right.
Which they really need to get on?
I feel like they probably have gotten on it.
Do you think there's like a baby iPhone with limited applications?
I mean, that's kind of what a lot of toys are like. You press different buttons and different things happen.
I know that there are.
Oh.
My friend's baby has a phone that is like, it's a toy phone. It's a toy iPhone. So I'm like, great.
I thought you just wished for it. You were like, they should get on that.
Well, they're already like attracted enough to the phones as it is.
Yes.
You don't need to give them extra incentive to want it.
Agree. I think the idea might be if they are happy with this, then maybe they won't want yours.
Maybe. And maybe it's better off them having a little plan than an actual thing with YouTube, and
especially because
all the things.
A lot of people think that cell phone usage kills you.
Kills you is bad for your brain cells?
Yeah.
That must be what happened to me.
Like my mother kind of thinks that. Someone else used to think that.
Someone else. I wonder about that. Do I wonder about that? Now I do.
Okay.
Sometimes you go through life, you should get smarter.
Mm-hmm. You feel like you're getting dumber?
I feel like I'm getting stupider.
Is that why you said that's probably what's happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
Do you always have it right here? No, it's away from you.
Yeah, usually it's on speaker. But I don't know, it's like here. Whatever, when I'm playing my dots. Connect the dots.
I'm so embarrassed by what levels I'm on in various games.
Yeah.
It's dizzying. Like, I can't believe there are this many levels.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there are people way ahead of me.
Yeah.
So, like, how deep does this go? Did you finish The Matrix?
I did finish The Matrix. Is that how deep does it go?
How far up does this
go? I did finish The Matrix, and actually, I don't know if it's like, because I forget if we were talking about it here or we were just talking about it in person, and like we're reading these like war scenes. I think I enjoyed the action scenes more than I have in the past. I was like, okay, pay attention. What's happening? Ooh, look at them doing the swoops and the slow-mo and the
yeah, but those aren't like just like your run-of-the-mill action scenes.
True.
They were like a little bit groundbreaking.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Like those were like I feel like they called them like the Matrix.
Although wasn't that stolen from? I forget what came first. Crouching Tiger came first, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I'm not sure. But it felt like maybe that was a little bit like copied or altered. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't put that past them. But definitely people know or refer to the Matrix when they're talking about like either slow motion or like those scenes where they're like still and the camera somehow moves around them. What's happening there?
What do you mean? Like actually?
Yes.
Like, what is that camera? I don't know. That's a good question.
It seems to me that you would have to literally have a camera everywhere. What's happening?
What is it saying? I don't know what's happening. Is it filming? So it's offline.
It also says live. Though.
Yeah, I'm confused. I don't know, do you think? No, I think it's fine.
My mother is sending me a lot of messages and I don't know what she's saying. Mother, I'm very confused by what you're saying. Especially this text.
What?
I tried to enlarge it and thought it was a before and after pic of your backyard. I don't know what she's talking about.
Okay. I just want to make sure this is working. Because I don't want to find out that, like, it was off or not. No, it is. Okay. No, it is. Okay.
It's gonna now echo through eternity. Oh no. Good.
No, I turned it off. Anyway, okay. I just wanted to make sure of that. Anyway, Matrix. Yes.
Oh, those.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, you like it?
It's very, this is funny, it's very Gen X. Like, it's very much that world, that generation.
I could see that, yeah.
Yeah.
But they're enduring themes.
Oh, definitely.
Right? Can you believe there's an SELP thing?
That is insane to me.
It's not at all insane to me. I'm like, it totally is.
Oh, yeah, but it's very, like, I just thought it was gimmicky. It's just because it's like one of those movies everyone is like, oh, you have to watch this. And I thought, okay, it's kind of like this hero movie, and I find most hero movies kind of boring.
Yeah, it's not really a hero movie, I don't think.
No. It was good. Cool. I think I'll watch. Will I watch the second? I've heard
I don't
the
know if I
second
would
is
go
good.
that far.
Really? It's not necessary?
I think I saw the second one maybe. And then was like, they need to stop with this. They should have already stopped.
Oh, okay. And the third is...
I think that's true, that the third sucks.
Okay. Also, Keanu Reeves, I mean, I know we know this.
Uh-huh. He's a genius?
Is he a genius? Or is he a bad actor? I cannot tell.
No, you can.
Or is it like that whatever that is that he's doing is perfect for that character in that movie, which it kind of is. Like, it works in that arena. All the things that he's, or maybe I'm just accepting it because it's like, okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah, it kind of is what it is. Meaning, that was a helpful comment. I mean, no, I think he's like really weird, and what is he doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really think he was a genius. It's like, he kind of seems like he has taken a emotional or spiritual tranquilizer.
Tranquilizer. Do you think he was like that
Sedative.
before the so he was like that before the Matrix, or did the Matrix make him that way?
I think this is just who he is in his bones.
I've thought of that around Jim Carrey.
What?
That like maybe doing all those movies changed him.
In what way?
In the way that he is today.
Which is?
You've seen...
I actually haven't. I just know that he, at some point, was like, oh, wait, all of this is narcissism. And I've spent most of my life, like, trying to get affirmation from the outside, and honestly, who gives a shit?
Which, fair enough. But
And he started meditating.
he started meditating, he started painting.
He's got a beard.
And granted, he like always believed in manifestation. But like, and I'm just thinking of Eternal Sunshine and Truman Show and then Man on the Moon. Like all these movies, even The Mask, like there's something deeply like thematic around his work actually, and I don't know if that's a coincidence.
I didn't see the last of the three, so I don't have the full picture.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
You're like a Jim Carrey super fan, is what I'm getting from this.
really?
I mean,
I've probably
you've
seen
all
his
those movies.
commencement speech way too many times.
I haven't seen it. You love him.
I mean, and I'm saying this because I forget who I was talking to, but at some point I was talking to someone who was like, Jim Carrey went crazy. And I got very offended because I kind of believe he talks about that he's like, oh, there is really no identity and there is no Jim Carrey. But yeah, I wonder like what came first, his movies or that little. I don't know if like the movies edged him towards that discovery.
That's very interesting.
You should see those movies.
No, I've seen the first two. No, I've seen The Mask and I fugly hate it.
Oh.
I really am offended by The Mask.
It's been a while. I thought you were Jim Carrey.
I feel like I am.
You're the female version of Jim Carrey.
No, remember we decided it's Joe Pesci.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, my face sometimes reminds me of him. Not like we look
it's
alike.
Expressive.
Because everything is like extreme loud and it makes you lean away.
Yeah.
It makes me lean away. Yeah. And his is also like that. It's like moldy. Moldy.
I mean, it's like
malleable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like stretched. Like he almost didn't need a mask in The Mask.
Yeah, his face is yeah.
I just remember seeing Liar Liar as a kid.
How did you feel about that?
Well, it was just like, oh my goodness.
I got a huge kick out of it.
Did you?
Yeah.
But I was a kid, and so there was sex in that movie. And I was like,
oh.
So I think that's the biggest thing I took away from Liar Liar.
Yeah, that's not, I don't think, the most prominent.
No, but it was like, oh my goodness.
Does
the kid catch them having sex? No.
I don't think
that's
so.
two. But I don't know.
So I've seen Eternal Sunshine and I've seen The Truman Show. I haven't seen the third one you mentioned.
Oh, okay.
What's his name?
Andy Kaufman.
About Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
When I told my friend that we were doing this, he's one of my friends, he said, that's some Andy Kaufman type shit.
What do you mean?
I said that this is what we were doing this.
Oh.
And Malcolm
said
that's Andy Kaufman type shit.
I'm absolutely confused by Andy Kaufman.
I think that's by design.
Oh, completely. It's just like what would be most confusing right now and kind of like aggressive towards an audience. In that like we would be giving them exactly what they don't want.
Poor dick move.
Yeah, he's an asshole. Yeah, but I think I discovered him like through the documentary on Jim Carrey, and then so I did everything backwards. I like watched the documentary, then I watched Man on the Moon, and then I looked up Andy Kaufman.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Singular. Probably not. I'm trying to remember if he's. I wonder if we will be able to get through this whole thing ever by not look at our phones. I mean, not like.
Yeah, when we're not reading.
Yes, for
non-reading purposes.
reading purposes. I can't remember the name of the movie. I'll just stop. Oh, now I have.
What?
I was trying to remember if what's it called is about if it's about him.
Yes. What's it called? It's about Andy Kaufman.
Okay. You know what?
He did the wrestling. You know about all that?
No.
He was it a show? No, or was it real? He wrestled women.
What?
Yeah, he created this thing where he had this persona where he was calling women weak and that they wouldn't take him on. So then he wrestled women. And
what?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That sounds cool.
He was to elicit that response.
Yeah.
And then on live television, and I forget if this is real or not, or if it was staged. He got punched by a woman? I forget this. I'm so unreliable with things like this.
I know. You really are.
I think it was Letterman. He said some really nasty things.
And somebody may have punched him.
Yeah, it's really clear. I obviously really looked this up. See, this is what I'm talking about. I don't know why. I feel like my mind is a sieve, and I take things in, and then the second I'm I use whatever I want, and then it goes.
But then you use whatever you want, so.
Yeah.
But then you're kind of.
But what I take from it is not the actual details of the thing. It's just something that really works for me. What happened yesterday?
I feel like not much.
I think the army was marching.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Oh, except one thing did happen,
Mm-hmm.
and that was that Rostov fell in love with the emperor.
Oh, right.
Deeply. And Rostov met Prince Andrew, and they almost got in a weird fight.
Yeah, I'm surprised they hadn't met before.
That's just because we've been at both of their houses a lot.
I thought everyone knew everyone.
It kind of seems like that sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
But I also haven't been tracking when things happen in Petersburg and when they happen in Moscow.
Right. That's very cloudy.
So, maybe one is from one else. You know what I don't remember is with the bear. Who's there? Dolokhov, Pierre. Who else? Whose house is he staying at? Prince Andrew?
Wait, what?
The bear.
Yeah, you're talking about at the beginning of the story.
Yes.
Right, so Pierre.
Who's there? Dolokhov and Pierre.
Yep.
And
is there anyone else?
There was the person whose house it was. I'm pretty sure it was either Andrew or someone that's a character,
It's definitely not Prince Andrew, because he was the one who was don't you dare go back to that house. Or don't go drinking. And then Pierre goes. So it's definitely not.
Don't go drinking?
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't know.
And Pierre's I will not, I swear.
And
then 5 hours later or whatever, he's oh, whatever, it's fine. I feel like it mentioned him in passing, and he was he was a little put upon.
Who, this person?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I
there was
made some
something
comment about everyone showing up and staying at his house.
Yeah.
But I don't remember who.
That the host is always kind of whatever. We're just gonna take advantage of your house.
Yeah.
I don't know if he showed up again.
Really?
I don't remember. You're welcome to go back and look.
At some point I shall.
Okay.
Because it's been kind of nagging me.
Yeah, there's like some plan, but I don't remember what it was, and it has to do with Wayrather. And
Wayrather.
Andrew had his own plan and wanted to tell it.
Right. The army has okayed the army has okayed and is moving forward with Wayrathers. Everyone is in generally very good spirits.
Yeah, people are feeling good. And Nicholas Rostov, he wrote home and told his family about the injury. And then there was like a little bit of a scene between Natasha and Sonia still loves Rostov, but Natasha no longer loves Boris.
She can't even remember him.
Yeah, she cannot. She closes her eyes. There is nothing there.
And Boris gets taken by Prince Andrew to some general guy.
Yeah, because he's trying to
make him his adjutant or something.
Right.
Get him a post.
Dolgorukov.
Yeah. But then some shit goes down like right when they get there.
Yeah, Dolgorukov is distracted.
No, after that, something doesn't happen?
I feel like they get called away. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's almost like we haven't read this.
Almost. It's almost like we just looked it up on Wikipedia.
Yeah, this is as close as you can get to not knowing the story, considering we know the story.
Yeah.
Like, we've basically done what you just said you do with everything, which is just like grab a couple of things,
just take the things you like,
most of it go
leave
through.
them go. Yeah, so remember all the love details, because those are the juicy bits for me.
Yeah, agree. I like when anyone is in a grand tizzy.
Yeah, those are good.
Like in some kind of like rap show. Whether it's like war rap show or like emperor rap show or like love rap show. All the rap shows.
We should read Don Quixote next then.
You think?
Ooh?
There's a musical.
Me neither.
It's like one of those.
Or maybe I have, and I forgot it.
That's where I know Don Quixote from. I kept him, and I trashed the musical. Dolgorukov. Okay. Are we ready?
Mm-hmm. Chapter 12. Shortly after 9 o'clock that evening, Wayrather drove with his plans to Kutuzov's quarters, where the council of war was to be held. All the commanders of columns were summoned, the commander-in-chiefs, and with the exception of Prince Bagration, who declined to come, were all there at the appointed time.
Wayrather, who was in full control of the proposed battle, by his eagerness and briskness presented a marked contrast to the dissatisfied and drowsy Kutuzov, who reluctantly played the part of chairman and president of the Council of War. Wayrather evidently felt himself to be at the head of a movement that had already become unrestrainable. He was like a horse running downhill, harnessed, this is a rapture clearly, harnessed to a heavy cart. Whether he was pulling it or being pushed by it, he did not know, but rushed along at headlong speed with no time to consider what this movement might lead to. Wayrather had been twice that evening to the enemy's picket line to
reconnoiter. It just means like reconnoiter.
Like reacquaint himself personally. And twice to the emperors, Russian and Austrian, to report and explain and to his headquarters, where he had dictated the dispositions in German, and now, much exhausted, he arrived at Kutuzov's.
He was evidently so busy that he even forgot to be polite to the commander-in-chief. He interrupted him, talked rapidly and indistinctly, without looking at the man he was addressing, and did not reply to questions put to him. He was bespattered with mud and had a pitiful, weary, and distracted air, though at the same time he was haughty and self-confident.
Kutuzov was occupying a nobleman's castle of modest dimensions near Austerlitz. In the large drawing room, which had become the commander-in-chief's office, were gathered Kutuzov himself, Wayrather, and the members of the Council of War. They were drinking tea and only awaited Prince Bagration to begin the council. At last, Bagration's orderly came with news that the prince could not attend. Prince Andrew came in to inform the commander-in-chief of this, and availing himself of permission previously given him by Kutuzov to be present at the council, he remained in the room. Ooh, got his little foot in the door, Andy.
Since Prince Bagration is not coming, we may begin, said Weyrother, hurriedly rising from his seat and going up to the table on which an enormous map of the environs of Brunn was spread out.
Kutuzov, with his uniform unbuttoned so that his fat neck bulged over his collar as if escaping a gun, was sitting almost asleep in a low chair with his podgy old hands resting symmetrically on its arms. At the sound of Weyrother's voice, he opened his one eye with...
Oh, I always forget.
What?
He only has one eye.
I forgot about that too, completely.
Yeah.
He opened his one eye with an effort.
Yes, if you please. It is already late, said he, and nodding his head, he let it droop and again closed his eye.
If at first the members of the council thought Kutuzov was pretending to sleep, the sounds his nose emitted during the reading that followed proved that the commander-in-chief at that moment was absorbed by a far more serious matter than a desire to show his contempt for the dispositions or anything else. He was engaged in satisfying the irresistible human need for sleep. He really was asleep. Got that. Weyrother, with the gesture of a man too busy to lose a moment, glanced at Kutuzov, and having convinced himself that he was asleep, took up a paper and in a loud, monotonous voice began to read out of the dispositions for the impending battle, under a heading which he also read out.
Dispositions for an attack on the enemy position behind Kobelnitz and Sokolnitz, November 30th, 1805.
Sokolnitz sounds like vulgar for some reason.
Sokolnitz. Like Sokol...
Oh, maybe that's why.
Sokolnitz.
The dispositions were very complicated and difficult. They began as follows.
As the enemy's left wing. Wait, I'm gonna get this. Okay, I'm gonna retain.
Okay.
The enemies on wooded hills.
You know what would help?
What? A map?
Yes. To know where the F.
I know. Why are
this is?
I'm disappointed that there isn't a little family tree or things like that. You know how
There
like
might
Lord
be.
of the Rings always has that stuff.
It might be at the end of the
I
book.
love that. Anyway,
In Kindle, they always put it at the end of the book.
the end.
And yeah, normally,
Yeah.
maybe the Lord of the Rings has it in the front. But a lot of times it's in the back and you get to the end and you're like, mother.
This whole time.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I used to just love like staring at those and like, ooh, they went here and then they went there and then they went there.
How many books did you read with maps?
I used to like fantasy books quite a lot.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah.
I'm hearing this for the first time.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
Nevertheless, you will remember.
We're going to get this,
Yeah.
okay? As the enemy's left wing rests on wooded hills and his right extends along Kobelnitz and Sokolnitz behind the ponds that are there, while we, on the other hand, with our left wing, there, right? Because
Yeah,
they're
I'm not
facing
looking,
each
but-
other.
I'm not looking, but yes.
By far outflank his right, it is advantageous to attack the enemy's latter wing, especially...
Wait.
Wait. Where did you get lost?
Their left wing by far outflank our...
No. Wait. Our left wing outflank their right.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay.
It is advantageous to attack the enemy's latter wing. Why don't they say right wing?
Latter?
I think it's the right wing. Especially if we occupy the villages of Sokolnitz and Kobelnitz, whereby we can both fall on his flank, pursue
right
him
flank?
over the plain between Schlapelnitz and the Turarasa forest, avoiding the defiles of Schlapelnitz and Belowitz, which cover the enemy's front.
What about the ponds?
I don't know. That's like near Koblenitz.
Yeah, it's between them and the...
So they'll overtake all that.
Okay.
For this object, it is necessary that the first column marches, second column marches, the third column marches, and so on.
What?
Read Wayrather.
For this, have you ever heard so meaningless a sentence as, for this object, it is necessary that first column marches, second column marches, third column marches,
It's like basically
and so
just
on.
everyone march.
But like sequentially, maybe is what they mean. Or not.
I don't know. So it sounds like they're going to attack the right over here, and then from there, push like that.
Uh-huh.
I think.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's also what I got. The general seemed to listen reluctantly to the difficult dispositions. The tall, fair-haired General Buxhowden stood, leaning his back against the wall, his eyes fixed on a burning candle, and seemed not to listen or even to wish to be thought to listen. Exactly opposite, Wayrather, with his glistening, wide-open eyes fixed upon him, and his mustache twisted upwards, sat the ruddy Miloradovich. In a military pose, his elbows turned outwards, his hands on his knees. Shoulders.
Oh, okay. His shoulders raised. I was thinking he's like...
I think that's it.
I love how you're trying to get that accurate, too. We need to know everything.
I'm all
now.
about accuracy right now. I was just so inspired by your goal to actually like get the book.
Wow.
To like read
Thank
the
you.
book.
Yeah. Yeah, let's really get it. From
Let's
now
like
on.
read the shit out.
Every detail, nook and cranny. We're going to be like, wait, what is this expression like?
Okay. He remained stubbornly silent, gazing at Wayrather's face, and only turned away his eyes when the Austrian chief of staff finished reading. Then Miloradovich or
Miloradovich. Milo Radovich.
okay. Then Miloradovich looked round significantly at the other generals, but one could not tell from that significant look whether he agreed or disagreed, and was satisfied or not.
But it was significant. It was like, I don't know. What's a significant look? That's good.
Like either he does or he doesn't.
It's just intense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next to Wayrather sat Count Langeron. Langeron.
I know.
I'm so emotionally, personally distressed by not being able to pronounce these things.
Really?
Yeah.
You're doing far better than I am.
I don't think that's true.
You seem to have this natural flair for Russian names.
I don't feel like I do at all. Miloradovich. Langerod. So he was next to Wayrather.
Mm-hmm.
And with a subtle smile that never left his typically southern French face during the whole time of the reading, gazed at his delicate fingers, which rapidly twirled by its corners a gold snuff box on which was a portrait. In the middle of one of the longest sentences, if he's calling it a long sentence, it's bound to be a chapter. He stopped the rotary motion of the snuff box, raised his head, and with inimical politeness lurking in the corners of his thin lips, interrupted Wayrather, wishing to say something. But the Austrian general, continuing to read, frowned angrily and jerked his elbows as if to say, "You can tell me your views later, but now be so good as to look at the map and listen." Langeron lifted his eyes with an expression of perplexity, turned round to Miloradovich, as if seeking an explanation, but meeting the latter's impressive but meaningless gaze, drooped his eyes sadly. Impressive but meaningless. Drooped his eyes sadly and again took to twirling his snuff box.
A geography lesson, he muttered as if to himself, but loud enough to be heard.
Presbyzuski, with respectful but dignified politeness, I don't know who this is, held his hand to his ear toward Wayrather. My father does that.
Does he?
Yeah. It actually helps. Like if you're in a loud restaurant and you want to look and you don't care how you look.
Yeah.
Kill whoever you're listening to is saying.
That's really sweet.
Sorry, I lost my spell.
With the air, held his hand to his ear, toward Wayrather.
Okay, yeah, my Kindle does weird things. With the air of a man absorbed in attention. Doktorov, a little man, sat opposite Wayrather with an assiduous and modest mien, and stooping over the outspread map, conscientiously studied the dispositions and the unfamiliar locality. He asked Wayrather several times to repeat words he had not clearly heard and the difficult names of the villages. Wayrather complied, and Doktorov noted them down.
When the reading, which lasted more than an hour, was over, Langeron? Langeron? I'm going to say Langeron. Again brought his snuff box to rest and, without looking at Wayrather or at anyone in particular, began to say how difficult it was to carry out such a plan in which the enemy's position was assumed to be known, whereas it was perhaps not known, since the enemy was in movement.
This seems like an extremely obvious problem for this day and age and situation.
Yeah, kind of. Langeron's objections were valid, but it was obvious that their chief aim was to show General Wayrather, who had read his dispositions with as much self-confidence as if he were addressing school children, that he had to do, not with fools, but with men who could teach him something in military matters.
I'm not going to. When the monotonous sound of Wayrather's voice ceased, Kutuzov opened his eye as a miller wakes up when the soporific drone of the mill wheel is interrupted. He listened to, "So you are still silly business," quickly closed his eyes again, and let his head sink still lower.
Langeron, trying as virulently as possible to sting Wayrather's vanity as author of the military plan, argued that Bonaparte might easily attack instead of being attacked, and so render the whole of this plan perfectly worthless. Wayrather met all objections with a firm and contemptuous smile, evidently prepared beforehand to meet all objections, be they what they might.
I really love how petty everyone is.
It's great.
Like they're not coming together for as one for the
No, they're all
plan.
just like,
everyone's just in their own ego.
Yeah, wanting to be noticed for their brilliance or their
Yeah.
This is my moment.
Positioning and
yeah.
Cool. Like every one of these people seems to be putting on a show at the Council of War instead of actually that much interfacing with the council with the content. Maybe it's not.
It strikes me as a career. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
this is
I guess
a board meeting.
Yeah,
it's like, it was the brilliant idea.
Yeah. I guess I just had it in my head that when the stakes are so high and when the situation is so dire that people would act less from ego, but I don't know I don't know why I think that, because maybe that's just not at all true.
Yeah, I mean, the way this has been discussed, it doesn't actually feel like anything is at stake for the main characters. It doesn't feel like there's an actual presence of them being attacked in Russia. This is just like, oh, this is something going on. Let's go join the war because that'll give us fame and glory.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you're getting the they don't seem to be endangered from the fact that we have so much of the book left?
Maybe. I also don't exactly. So they're in Austria right now.
Yeah.
And I really don't need to show how little I know. But I don't know if because we've just been following the Russians. I don't know if the Russians are just like they're not going to get to us. Like the chances of that happening are very slim. I don't know how seriously they take the threat, and maybe that's just because
I think it has to be serious because if nothing else, first of all, I think that Napoleon was a bit of like a unifying force on the others.
Yeah.
From his way of, from the way he like took over Europe, but I think also that relationships are really complex. So like it is a matter of significance to Russia if Austria falls, for example.
Right.
So it doesn't need to be physically on their land, I don't think, to threaten their interests, their supply lines, that like all kinds of things. So you could be really affected by something in theory that isn't happening on your soil.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe then that's a failing of the book that they're not in danger, or maybe
or it's very realistic that like you kind of put it out of your head. You're like, that won't happen to us. You make some justification out of that is too overwhelming. Yeah, like the fact that they're all kind of like, no, listen to my plan, says that they're like living into a future where that really matters.
Right.
And they're not thinking if they don't get this right, there won't be a future.
Right. Yeah. That clarity of stakes is not so much held in the mind.
Oh yeah, one of those asleep.
Yeah. Or he's appearing to be asleep to piss someone off. Which is better.
Either way, yeah.
If he could attack us, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
If he could attack us, he would have done so today, said he.
So you think he is powerless, said Langeron.
He has 40,000 men at most, replied Wayrather with the smile of a doctor to whom an old wife wishes to explain the treatment of a case.
In that case, he is inviting his doom by awaiting our attack, said Langeron, with a subtly ironic smile, again glancing round for support to Miloradovich. Miloradovich near him.
Miloradovich. I got confused just now. That moment, evidently thinking of anything rather than of what the generals were disputing about.
Ma foi, said he, tomorrow we shall see all that on the battlefield.
Wayrather again gave that smile, which seemed to say that to him it was strange and ridiculous to meet objections from Russian generals, and to have to prove to them what he had not merely convinced himself of, but had also convinced the sovereign emperors of.
The enemy has quenched his fires, and a continual noise is heard from his camp, said he. What does that mean? Either he is retreating, which is the only thing we need fear, or he is changing his position. He smiled ironically. But even if he also took up a position in the Toyrasa, he merely saves us a great deal of trouble, and all our arrangements, to the minutest detail, remain the same.
How is that? Began Prince Andrew, who had for long been waiting an opportunity to express his doubts.
Good moment to jump in, Andrew. Kutuzov here woke up, coughed heavily, and looked round at the generals.
Gentlemen, the dispositions for tomorrow, or rather for today, for it is past midnight, cannot now be altered, said he. You have heard them, and we shall all do our duty, but before a battle there's nothing more important, he paused, than to have a good sleep.
He moved as if to rise. The generals bowed and retired. It was past midnight. Prince Andrew went out.
Wait, so Prince Andrew was like, this is stupid, and then everyone was like, we gotta go.
That was his moment, and he spoke.
He's really good at
well done, Prince Andrew.
Either that, or Kutuzov is like, he shouldn't be talking right now, and he's like, right then, we're leaving.
Maybe.
But he was asleep.
I just think of Kutuzov as Mad-Eye Moody now.
Who that?
I know. You've seen the movies, Harry Potter. In which case, is it Kutuzov?
I don't know who that is.
It's the guy with one eye. Well, he has two eyes, but one of them is glass. Mad-Eye Moody.
It's not coming.
In book 4?
It's not coming.
I don't want to spoil that. He's one of the professors against the dark arts. In book 4, he comes in. And then it turns out he's actually not Mad Eye.
He's
Bartley Crouch Jr.
What?
I know.
What the fuck is that?
Barty. No, it's not Bartley. It's Barty. Wait, what is it? It's Crouch Jr., played by David Tennant.
Really?
Yeah. He seems to come up a lot. No, wait, I don't.
I must have stopped seeing the movies at some point. Because I have not seen a Harry Potter with David Tennant.
Oh, because he survives, so he's in it for a while.
Survives what? You know what? Let's talk about this another time.
Anyway, okay.
The Council of War, at which Prince Andrew had not been able to express his opinion as he had hoped to, left on him a vague and uneasy impression. Whether Dolgorukov and Weyrother, or Kutuzov, Langeron, and the others, who did not approve of the plan of attack, were right, he did not know. But was it really not possible for Kutuzov to state his views plainly to the Emperor? Is it possible that on account of court and personal considerations, tens of thousands of lives, and my life, he thought, must be risked?
Yes, it is very likely that I shall be killed tomorrow, he thought.
How funny. This is addressing both of the things we just commented on.
Right.
The, recognizing the stakes and also feeling personally threatened.
Yeah, there you go. Wait, who's thinking right now?
Andrew.
Maybe Andrew's the only one. Yes, it is very likely that I shall be killed tomorrow, he thought. And suddenly at this thought of death, a whole series of most distant, most intimate memories rose in his imagination. He remembered his last parting from his father and his wife. He remembered the days when he first loved her. He thought of her pregnancy and felt sorry for her and for himself. And in a nervously emotional and softened mood, he went out of the hut in which he was billeted with Nesvitsky and began to walk up and down before it.
The night was foggy, and through the fog the moonlight gleamed mysteriously. Yes, tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow everything may be over for me. All these memories will be no more, or perhaps even certain. I have a presentiment that for the first time I shall have to show what I can do. And his fancy pictured the battle, its loss, the concentration of fighting at one point, and the hesitation of all the commanders. And then that happy moment, that too long for which he had so long waited, presents itself to him at last. He firmly and clearly expresses his opinion to Kutuzov, to Weyrother, and to all the emperors. All are struck by the justness of his views, and no one undertakes to carry them out. But no one undertakes to carry them out. So he takes a regiment, a division, stipulates that no one is to interfere with his arrangements, leads his division to the decisive point, and gains the victory alone. But death and suffering? Suggested another voice. Prince Andrew, however, did not answer that voice, and went on dreaming of his triumphs. Triumphs.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a hard word to say.
Triumphs.
The dispositions for the next battle are planned by him alone. Nominally, he is only an adjutant on Kutuzov's staff, but he does everything alone. The next battle is won by him alone. Kutuzov is removed, and he is appointed. Well, and then? Asked the other voice. If before that you are not 10 times wounded, killed, or betrayed, well, what then? Well, then, Prince Andrew answered himself. I don't know what will happen, and don't want to know, and can't. But if I want this, want glory, want to be known to men, want to be loved by them, it is not my fault that I want it and want nothing but that and live only for that. Jesus. He's Jim Carrey pre-realization. Yes, for that alone, I shall never tell anyone, but oh God. What am I to do if I love nothing but fame and men's esteem? Death, wounds, the loss of family, I fear nothing. And precious and dear as many persons are to me, father, sister, wife, those dearest to me, yet dreadful and unnatural as it seems, I would give them all at once for a moment of glory, of triumph over men, Jesus. Of love for men I don't know and never shall know. For the love of these men here, he thought, as he listened to voices in Kutuzov's courtyard. The voices were those of the orderlies who were packing up. One voice, probably a coachman's, was teasing Kutuzov's old cook, whom Prince Andrew knew, and who was called Tit. He was saying, "Tit, I say, Tit!"
"Well," returned the old man.
"Go, Tit, thresh a bit," said the wag.
"Oh, go to the devil," called out a voice, drowned by the laughter of the orderlies and servants.
All the same, I love and value nothing but triumph over them all. I value this mystic power and glory that is floating here above me in this mist. Holy crap! Andrew is a giant narcissist.
Yeah. Or is he just honest?
No, I think that both of those things are true.
I don't know. That's like someone being like, my work is more important to me than anything.
Than the lives of my family. I literally would give all of my family members up for success.
All up for this. I don't know. It's like being swept up in something greater than yourself.
Yeah. That is not, mutually exclusive with narcissism.
Right.
It's like a kind of a strangely accurate description.
Hmm. Chapter 13. That same night, Rostov was with a platoon on skirmishing duty in front of Bagration's detachment. His hussars were placed along the line in couples, and he himself rode along the line trying to master the sleepiness that kept coming over him. An enormous space, with our army's campfires dimly glowing in the fog, could be seen behind him. In front of him was misty darkness. Rostov could see nothing, peer as he would into that foggy distance. Now something gleamed gray. Now there was something black. Now little lights seemed to glimmer where the enemy ought to be. Now he fancied it was only something in his own eyes. His eyes kept closing, and in his fancy appeared, now the Emperor, now Denisov, and now Moscow memories. Again before him the head and ears of the horse he was riding, and sometimes, when he came within 6 paces of them, the black figures of hussars. But in the distance, was still the same misty darkness. Why not? It might easily happen, thought Rostov, that the Emperor will meet me and give me an order, as he would to any other officer. He'll say, "Go and find out what's there." There are many stories of his getting to know an officer in just such a chance way and attaching him to himself. What if he gave me a place near him? Oh, how I would guard him, how I would tell him the truth, how I would unmask his deceivers. And in order to realize vividly his love devotion to the sovereign, Rostov pictured to himself an enemy or a deceitful German, whom he would not only kill with pleasure, but whom he would slap in the face before the Emperor. Suddenly, a distant shout aroused him. He started and opened his eyes.
Where am I? Oh yes, in the skirmishing line. Pass and watchword shaft, almost. What a nuisance that our squadron will be in reserve tomorrow, he thought. I'll ask leave to go to the front. This may be my only chance of seeing the Emperor. It won't be long now before I am off duty. I'll take another turn, and when I get back, I'll go to the general and ask him. He readjusted himself in the saddle and touched up his horse to ride once more around his hussars. It seemed to him that it was getting lighter. To the left, he saw a sloping descent lit up, and facing it a black knoll that seemed as steep as a wall. On this knoll, there was a white patch that Rostov could not at all make out. Was it a glade in the wood lit up by the moon, or some unmelted snow, or some white houses? He even thought something moved on that white spot. I expected snow. That spot. Tash, he thought. There now. It's not Tash. Natasha. Sister, black eyes. Natasha, won't you be surprised when I tell her how I've seen the Emperor? Natasha, take my saber, Tash. Keep to the right, Your Honor. There are bushes here, came the voice of an hussar, past whom Rostov was riding in the act of falling asleep. Rostov lifted his head that had almost sunk to his horse's mane and pulled up beside the Hussar. He was succumbing to irresistible, youthful, childish drowsiness. But what was I thinking? Oh!
Keep going.
Ah! But what was I thinking? I mustn't forget. How shall I speak to the Emperor? Oh, that's not it. That's tomorrow. Oh, yes. Natasha. Sabertash. Saber... Them? Who? The Hussars. Ah, the Hussars with mustaches. Along the Tverskaya street rode the Hussars with mustaches. I thought about him too, just opposite Guryev's house. Old Guryev. Oh, but Denisov's a fine fellow. But that's all nonsense. The chief thing is that the Emperor is here. How he looked at me and wished to say something, but did not. No, it was I who dared not. But that's nonsense. The chief thing is not to forget the important thing I was thinking of. Yes, Natasha, Sabertash. Oh, yes, that's right. And his head once more sank to his horse's neck. All at once it seemed to him that he was being fired at. What? Cut them down! What? Said Rostov, waking up. At the moment he opened his eyes, he heard in front of him, where the enemy was, the long-drawn shouts of thousands of voices. His horse and the horse of the Hussar near him pricked their ears at these shouts. Over there, where the shouting came from, a fire flared up and went out again, then another. And all along the French line on the hill, fires flared up, and the shouting grew louder and louder. Rostov could hear the sound of French words, but could not distinguish them. The din of many voices was too great. All he could hear was, ah ha ha ha, and
What's that? What do you make of it? Said Rostov to the Hussar beside him. It must be the enemy's camp.
The Hussar did not reply.
Why, don't you hear it? Rostov asked again, after waiting for a reply.
Who can tell, Your Honor? Replied the Hussar reluctantly.
From the direction, it must be the enemy, repeated Rostov.
It may be he, or it may be nothing, muttered the Hussar. It's dark, steady, he cried to his fidgeting horse.
Rostov's horse was also getting restive. It pawed the frozen ground, pricking its ears at the noise and looking at the lights. Shouting grew still louder and merged into a general roar that only an army of several thousand men could produce. The lights spread farther and farther, probably along the line of the French camp. No longer wanton shouting of the enemy army had a stimulating effect on him. Vive l'Empereur! L'Empereur! He now heard distinctly.
They can't be far off. Probably just beyond the stream, he said to the Hussar beside him.
The Hussar only sighed without replying and coughed angrily.
What's that guy's deal?
I don't know. He's like, shut up. Doesn't matter. Whatever. Sound of horses' hoofs approaching at a trot along the line of Hussars was heard, and out of the foggy darkness the figure of a sergeant of Hussars suddenly appeared, looming huge as an elephant.
Your Honor, the generals, said the sergeant, riding up to Rostov.
Rostov, still looking round toward the fires and the shouts, rode with the sergeant to meet some mounted men who were riding along the line. One was on a white horse. Prince Bagration and Prince Dolgorukov, with their adjutants, had come to witness the curious phenomenon of the lights and shouts in the enemy's camp. Rostov rode up to Bagration, reported to him, and then joined the adjutants listening to what the generals were saying.
Believe me, said Prince Dolgorukov, addressing Bagration, it is nothing but a trick. He has retreated and ordered the rear guard to kindle fires and make a noise to deceive us.
Hardly, said Bagration. I saw them this evening on that knoll. If they had retreated, they would have withdrawn from that too. Officer, said Bagration to Rostov, are the enemy's skirmishers still there?
They were there this evening, but now I don't know, Your Excellency. Shall I go with some of my Hussars to see? Replied Rostov.
Bagration stopped and, before replying, tried to see Rostov's face in the mist.
Well, go and see, he said after a pause.
Yes, sir.
Rostov spurred his horse, called to Sergeant Fedchenko and two other Hussars, told them to follow him, and trotted downhill in the direction from which the shouting came. He felt both frightened and pleased to be riding alone with three Hussars into that mysterious and dangerous misty distance where no one had been before him. Bagration called to him from the hill not to go beyond the stream, but Rostov pretended not to hear him and did not stop, but rode on and on, continually mistaking bushes for trees and gullies for men, and continually discovering his mistakes. Having descended the hill at a trot, he no longer saw either our own or the enemy's fires. What the fuck is he doing? but heard the shouting of the French more loudly and distinctly. In the valley he saw before him something like a river, but when he reached it, he found it was a road. Having come out onto the road, he reined in his horse, hesitating whether to ride along it or cross it and ride over the black field up the hillside. To keep to the road, which gleamed white in the mist, would have been safer because it would be easier to see people coming along it. Dongo, you can... Okay. Follow me, said he, crossed the road and began riding up the hill at a gallop toward the point where the French pickets had been standing that evening.
Your Honor, there he is, cried one of the hussars behind him. And before Rostov had time to make out what the black thing was that had suddenly appeared in the fog, there was a flash, followed by a report, and a bullet whizzing high up in the mist with a plaintive sound passed out of hearing. Another musket missed fire but flashed in the pan. Rostov turned his horse and galloped back. 4 more reports followed at intervals, and the bullets passed somewhere in the fog, singing in different tones. Rostov reined in his horse, whose spirits had risen, like his own at the firing, and went back at a foot pace. Well, some more, a merry voice was saying in his soul, but no more shots came.
Only when approaching Bagration did Rostov let his horse gallop again, and with his hand at the salute, rode up to the general.
Dolgorukov was still insisting that the French had retreated, and had only lit fires to deceive us.
What does that prove? He was saying as Rostov rode up. They might retreat and leave the pickets.
It's plain that they have not all gone yet, Prince, said Bagration. Wait till tomorrow morning. We'll find out everything tomorrow.
The picket is still on the hill, Your Excellency, just where it was in the evening, reported Rostov, stooping forward with his hand at the salute and unable to repress the smile of delight induced by his ride, and especially by the sound of the bullets.
Very good, said Bagration. Thank you, officer.
Your Excellency, said Rostov, may I ask a favor?
What is it?
Tomorrow our squadron is to be in reserve. May I ask to be attached to the first squadron?
What's your name?
Count Rostov.
Oh, very well. You may stay in attendance on me.
Who is he staying in attendance? Bagration?
Yeah.
Count Ilya Rostov's son? Asked Dolgorukov.
Rostov did not reply.
Then I may reckon on it, Your Excellency.
I will give the order.
Tomorrow, very likely, I may be sent with some message to the Emperor, thought Rostov.
Thank God.
The fires and shouting in the enemy's army were occasioned by the fact that while Napoleon's proclamation was being read to the troops, the Emperor himself, seeing him, lit wisps of straw and ran after. Napoleon's proclamation was as follows.
Soldiers! The Russian army is advancing against you to avenge the Austrian army of Ulm. They are the same battalions you broke at Hollabrunn and have pursued ever since to this place. The position we occupy is a strong one, and while they are marching to go round me on the right, they will expose a flank to me. Soldiers, I will myself direct your battalions. I will keep out of fire if you, with your habitual valor, carry disorder and confusion into the enemy's ranks. But should victory be in doubt, even for a moment, you will see your emperor exposing himself to the first blows of the enemy. For there must be no doubt of victory, especially on this day, when what is at stake is the honor of the French infantry, so necessary to the honor of our nation.
Do not break your ranks on the plea of removing the wounded. Let every man be fully imbued with the thought that we must defeat these hirelings of England, inspired by such hatred of our nation. This victory will conclude our campaign, and we can return to winter quarters, where fresh French troops who are being raised in France will join us, and the peace I shall conclude will be worthy of my people, of you, and of myself. Napoleon.
Chapter 14. At 5 in the morning, it was still quite dark. The troops of the center, the reserves, and Bagration's right flank had not yet moved, but on the left flank, the columns of infantry, cavalry, and artillery, which were to be the first to descend the heights to attack the French right flank and drive it into the Bohemian mountains according to plan, were already up and astir. The smoke of the campfires, into which they were throwing everything superfluous, made the eyes smart. It was cold and dark. The officers were hurriedly drinking tea and breakfasting. The soldiers, munching biscuit and beating a tattoo with their feet to warm themselves, gathering around the fires, throwing into the flames the remains of sheds, chairs, tables, wheels, tubs, and everything that they did not want or could not carry away with them. Austrian column guides were moving in and out among the Russian troops and served as heralds of the advance. As soon as an Austrian officer showed himself near a commanding officer's quarters, the regiment began to move. The soldiers ran from the fires, thrust their pikes into their boots, their bags into the carts, got their muskets ready, and formed rank. The officers buttoned up their coats, buckled on their swords and pouches, and moved along the ranks shouting. The train drivers and orderlies harnessed and packed the wagons and tied on the loads. The adjutants and battalion and regimental commanders mounted, crossed themselves, gave final instructions, orders, and commissions to the baggage men who remained behind, and the monotonous tramp of thousands of feet resounded. The column moved forward without knowing where and unable, from the masses around them, the smoke and the increasing fog, to see either the place they were leaving or that to which they were going.
A soldier on the march is hemmed in and borne along by his regiment as much as a sailor is by his ship. However far he has walked, whatever strange, unknown, and dangerous places he reaches, just as a sailor is always surrounded by the same decks, masts, and rigging of his ship, so the soldier always has around him the same comrades, the same ranks, the same sergeant major, Ivan Mitrik, the same company dog, Jack, and the same commanders. The sailor rarely cares to know the latitude in which his ship is sailing, but on the day of battle, heaven knows how and whence, a stern note of which all are conscious sounds in the moral atmosphere of an army, announcing the approach of something decisive and solemn, and awakening in the men an unusual curiosity. On the day of battle, the soldiers excitedly try to get beyond the interests of their regiment. They listen intently, look about, and eagerly ask concerning what is going on around them.
The fog had grown so dense that though it was growing light, they could not see 10 paces ahead. Bushes looked like gigantic trees, and level ground like cliffs and slopes. Anywhere, on any side, one might encounter an enemy invisible 10 paces off. The columns advanced for a long time, always in the same fog, descending and ascending hills, avoiding gardens and enclosures, going over new and unknown ground, and nowhere encountering the enemy. On the contrary, the soldiers became aware that in front, behind, and on all sides, other Russian columns were moving in a place where he was going. Many more of our men were going too.
There now, the Kurskis have also gone past, was being said in the ranks.
It's wonderful what a lot of our troops have gathered, lads. Last night I looked at the campfires and there was no end of them. A regular Moscow.
Though none of the column commanders rode up to the ranks or talked to the men, the commanders, as we saw at the Council of War, were out of humor and dissatisfied with the affair, and so did not exert themselves to cheer the men, but merely carried out the orders. Yet the troops marched gaily, as they always do when going into action, especially to an attack. But when they had marched for about an hour in the dense fog, the greater part of the men had to halt, and an unpleasant consciousness of some dislocation and blunder spread through the ranks. How such a consciousness is communicated is very difficult to define, but it certainly is communicated very surely and flows rapidly, imperceptibly, and irrepressibly as water does in a creek. Had the Russian army been alone without any allies, it might perhaps have been a long time before this consciousness of mismanagement became a general conviction, but as it was, the disorder was readily and naturally attributed to the stupid Germans, and everyone was convinced that a dangerous muddle had been occasioned by the sausage eaters.
Why have we stopped? Is the way blocked? Or have we already come up against the French?
No, one can't hear them. They'd be firing if we had.
They were in a hurry enough to start us, and now here we stand in the middle of a field without rhyme or reason. It's all those damn Germans muddling. What stupid devils.
Yes, I'd send them on in front, but no fear, they're crowding up behind. And now here we stand hungry.
I say, shall we soon be clear? They say the cavalry are blocking the way, said an officer.
Ah, those damn Germans. They don't know their own country, said another.
What division are you? Shouted an adjutant, riding up.
The 18th.
Then why are you here? You should have gone on long ago. Now you won't get there till evening.
What stupid orders. They don't themselves know what they're doing, said the officer and rode off.
Then a general rode past shouting something angrily, not in Russian.
Tafa lafa! But what he's jabbering no one can make out, said a soldier, mimicking the general who had ridden away. I'd shoot them, the scoundrels.
We were ordered to be at the place before 9, but we haven't gotten halfway. Fine orders, was being repeated on different sides.
And the feeling of energy with which the troops had started began to turn into vexation and anger at the stupid arrangements and at the Germans. Just blame them for everything, I guess.
The cause of the confusion was that while the Austrian cavalry was moving toward our left flank, the higher command found that our center was too far separated from our right flank.
Okay. The cause of the
confusion was that while the Austrian cavalry was moving toward our left flank, the higher command found that our center was too far separated from our right flank and that the cavalry were all ordered to turn back to the right. Several thousand cavalry crossed in front of the infantry who had to wait. Such a cluster. So like, oh no, we're too far here.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
At the front, an altercation occurred between an Austrian guide and a Russian general. The general shouted at him. I mean, can you imagine that this is an organizational nightmare? Because you can't communicate like
speakerphone. Hey,
you can't just call someone, text them, and be like, "You look like you're going way far right." At the front, an altercation occurred between an Austrian guide and a Russian general. The general shouted a demand that the cavalry should be halted. The Austrian argued that not he, but the higher command was to blame. The troops, meanwhile, stood, growing listless and dispirited. After an hour's delay, they at last moved on, descending the hill. The fog that was dispersing on the hill lay still more densely below, where they were descending. In front, in the fog, a shot was heard, and then another, at first irregularly, at varying intervals. Tra-da-da! And then more and more regularly and rapidly, and the action at the Gold Bach stream began.
Not expecting to come on the enemy down by the stream, and having stumbled on him in the fog, hearing no encouraging word from their commanders, and with the consciousness of being too late, spreading through the ranks, and above all, being unable to see anything in front or around them in the thick fog. Right, it's also foggy, okay.
But they can hear people coming, can't they?
Yeah. Shots with the enemy lazily, and advanced and again halted, receiving no timely orders from the officers or adjutants, who wandered about in the fog in those unknown surroundings, unable to find their own regiments.
Oh, Jesus.
In this way, the action began for the first, second, and third columns, which had gone down into the valley. The fourth column, with which Kutuzov was, stood on the Pratzen heights.
Below, where the fight was beginning, there was still thick fog. On the higher ground, it was clearing, but nothing could be seen of what was going on in front. Whether all the enemy forces were, as we supposed, 6 miles away, or whether they were nearby, in that sea of mist, no one knew till after 8 o'clock.
It was 9 o'clock in the morning. The fog lay unbroken, like a sea down below, but higher up at the village of Schlapelnitz, where Napoleon stood with his marshals around him, it was quite light. Above him was a clear blue sky, and the sun's vast orb quivered like a huge hollow, crimson float on the surface of that milky sea of mist. The whole French army, and even Napoleon himself with his staff, were not on the far side of the streams and hollows of Sokolnitz and Schlapelnitz, beyond which we intended to take up our position and begin the action, but were on this side, so close.
Schlappenitz is one of those 2 towns, right, that had the ponds in front of them?
I guess so.
That Napoleon's right flank was supposed to be behind.
Yes.
The whole French army, and even Napoleon himself with his staff, were not on the far side of the stream.
So they were not actually on that side.
Of the streams and hollows.
Yeah.
Is that the ponds?
I think so. I know. But we're on this side. So it's higher up at the village of Schlapelnitz. This side, so close to our own forces. So they're not where we think they are.
Right.
But we're on this side, so close to our own forces that Napoleon, with the naked eye, could distinguish a mounted man from one on foot. So they're very close, but they can't see them? Okay. Napoleon in the blue cloak, which he had worn on his Italian campaign.
Because of the fog.
Yeah. But it's clear where they are.
Who?
Napoleon.
Yes. Meaning what?
I'm just trying to see how close they are together. It must be
because
they're going down into the valley.
Yes. Clearly the topographical aspect was not stressed in the Council of War.
Right.
And consequently we don't.
And the guy was like, oh, it's a geography lesson. Yeah, you should have paid attention to the geography lesson.
No kidding. But it seems like the argument in the Council of War was either the question of, are the French holding or are they retreating? And I don't know if anyone considered that they would advance.
Advance?
Yes.
Didn't. They did talk about that. They were like, what if Napoleon attacks us first? And then they were like, oh no, we saw them putting out smoke fire or something. The only explanation for that is, I forget what it was. But the only explanation was they were retreating, or they were anyway, they can't be they're not readying to attack us.
Why would they not be? Isn't this a war?
No, they're just nah, whatever. They're playing cards.
Okay.
Napoleon in the blue cloak, which he had worn on his Italian campaign, sat on his small gray Arab horse a little in front of his marshals. He gazed silently at the hills which seemed to rise out of the sea of mist, and on which the Russian troops were moving in the distance, and he listened to the sounds of firing in the valley. Not a single muscle of his face, which in those days was still thin, moved. His gleaming eyes were fixed intently on one spot. His predictions were being justified. The Russians toward the ponds and lakes, and part were leaving these Pratzen heights, which he intended to attack and regarded as the key to the position. He saw over the mist that in a hollow between two hills near the village of Pratzen, the Russian columns, those bayonets glittering, were moving continuously in one direction toward the valley and disappearing one after another into the mist. From information he had received the evening before, from the sound of wheels and footsteps heard by the outpost during the night, by the disorderly movement of the Russian columns, and from all indications, he saw clearly that the Allies believed him to be far away in front of them, and that the columns moving near Pratzen constituted the center of the Russian army, and that center was already sufficiently weakened to be successfully attacked. But still, he did not begin the engagement.
I thought he'd begun the engagement.
I don't know. He's watching.
Today was a great day for him. The anniversary of his coronation. Before dawn, he had slept for a few hours, and refreshed, vigorous, and in good spirits, he mounted his horse and rode out into the field in that happy mood in which everything seems possible and everything succeeds. He sat motionless, looking at the heights visible above the mist, and his cold face wore that special look of confident, self-complacent happiness that one sees on the face of a boy happily in love. The marshals stood behind him, not venturing to distract his attention. He looked now at the Pratzen heights, now at the sun floating up out of the mist.
When the sun had entirely emerged from the fog, and fields and mists were aglow with dazzling light, as if he had only awaited this to begin the action, he drew the glove from his shapely white hand, made a sign with it to the marshals, and ordered the action to begin. The marshals, accompanied by adjutants, galloped off in different directions, and a few minutes later the chief forces of the French army moved rapidly toward those Pratzen heights which were being more and more denuded by Russian troops moving down the valley to their left.
To whose left?
To their left.
To their left?
Their left. To their.
So basically, the reason that the French are so much better at this is because there's only one of them.
Maybe, actually.
And the Fugly Council of War, where everyone's trying to come to some single thing, is so basically like this is anti-democratic, pro-tyrannical argument.
Yeah, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe. I mean, we don't exactly know the organization of. I imagine there's people under Napoleon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really know who's in charge of things on the Russian side.
It's
apparently the emperor, but I don't really know what he's doing.
Right. And I think that's part of the...
Amazing.
That's part of the issue, I think.
Yeah.
Because it seems like Napoleon is actually making decisions. Like, actual decisions about what they are going to do.
Yeah.
And there's no one person doing that on this other side.
Yeah, I don't know why they're so confident. They're so cocky. They're like, no. There's no way. Like, they're not... If this were chess, I would not play chess this way, basically. I don't understand why they think it's going to be so simple to destroy Napoleon based on everything that they've heard about him and everything he's done.
I mean, maybe, and I don't know anything about this, so it's great that we're discussing it. I can imagine them being like, France.
But we're Russia.
Well, it's also a bunch of different countries. It's a bunch of different countries.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Germans and the Austrians and the... So, like, how could the French, on their own, defeat this pretty gargantuan force? Maybe that's the source of the... I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe. I'm sure there's some of that. Chapter 15. At 8 o'clock, Kutuzov rode to Pratzen. At the head of the fourth column, Miloradovich, the one that was to take the place of Przebyswecki's and Langeron's columns, which had already gone down into the valley. He greeted the men of the foremost regiment and gave them the order to march, thereby indicating that he intended to lead that column himself. When he had reached the village of Pratzen, he halted. Prince Andrew was behind, among the immense number forming the commander-in-chief's suite. He was in a state of suppressed excitement and irritation, though controlledly calm as a man is at the approach of a long-awaited moment. He was firmly convinced that this was the day of his Toulon, or his bridge of Arcola. Do you know what that means?
His moment.
I figured it was that.
Big moment.
Like this. How it would come about, he did not know, but he felt sure it would do so. The locality and the position of our troops were known to him as far as they could be known to anyone in our army. His own strategic plan, which obviously could not now be carried out, was forgotten. Now, entering into Weyrother's plan, Prince Andrew considered possible contingencies and formed new projects such as might call for his rapidity of perception and decision.
He's deluded. To the left, down below in the mist, the musketry fire of unseen forces could be heard. It was there Prince Andrew thought the fight would concentrate. To the left, down below in the mist. So he's the fugly reason they're going left.
He is?
But they're going that way. It was there Prince Andrew thought the fight would concentrate. There we shall encounter difficulties, and there, thought he, I shall be sent with a brigade or division, and there, standard in hand, I shall go forward and break whatever is in front of me.
He could not look calmly at the standards of the passing battalions. Seeing them, he kept thinking, that may be the very standard with which I shall lead the army.
Dear Lord.
I mean, he's just a daydreamer.
That's very generous. In the morning, all that was left of the night mist on the heights was a hoar frost, now turning to dew, but in the valleys it still lay like a milk-white sea. Nothing was visible in the valley to the left into which our troops had descended. That was a dumb choice, to descend into the mist.
Yeah, let's go down into a valley.
Where that we can't see into?
It's great. Yeah.
Nothing was visible in the valley to the left into which our troops had descended, and from whence came the sounds of firing. Above the heights was the dark, clear sky. What? And to the right, the vast orb of the sun. In front, far off on the farther shore of that sea of mist, some wooded hills were discernible, and it was there the enemy probably was, for something could be descried. I don't know how to say that. On the right, the guards were entering the misty region with a sound of hooves and wheels, and now and then a gleam of bayonets. To the left, beyond the village, similar masses of cavalry came up and disappeared came up?
To the left, beyond the village, similar masses and disappeared in the sea mist. Was it just really hilly?
I don't know. But I thought the sea of mist was definitely down.
Yeah.
And that's why they came up and disappeared in the...
That's why I was like, is it hilly? Like, they appeared and then, went back down again.
In front and behind moved infantry. The commander-in-chief was standing at the end of the village, letting the troops pass by him. That morning, Kutuzov seemed worn and irritable. The infantry passing before him came to a halt without any command being given, apparently obstructed by something in front.
Do order them to form into battalion columns and go round the village, he said angrily to a general who had ridden up. Don't you understand, Your Excellency, my dear sir, that you must not defile through narrow village streets when we are marching against the enemy?
I intended to reform them beyond the village, Your Excellency, the general
laughed bitterly.
Make a fine thing of it, deploying in sight of the enemy, very fine.
The enemy is still far away, Your Excellency, according to the dispositions.
The dispositions! Exclaimed Kutuzov bitterly. Who told you that? Kindly do as you are ordered.
Yes, sir.
My dear fellow, Nesvitsky whispered to Prince Andrew. The old man is as surly as a dog.
An Austrian officer in a white uniform with green plumes in his hat galloped up to Kutuzov and asked in the Emperor's name, had the fourth column advanced into action.
Kutuzov turned round without answering, and his eye happened to fall on Prince Andrew, who was beside him. Seeing him, Kutuzov's malevolent and caustic expression softened, as if admitting that what was being done was not his adjutant's fault, and still not answering the Austrian adjutant, he addressed Volkonsky.
Go, my dear fellow, and see whether the 3rd Division has passed the village. Tell it to stop and await my orders.
Hardly had Prince Andrew started than he stopped him.
And ask whether sharpshooters have been posted, he added. What are they doing? What are they doing? He murmured to himself, still not replying to the Austrian.
Prince Andrew galloped off to execute the order.
Overtaking the battalions that continued to advance, he stopped the 3rd Division and convinced himself that there really were no sharpshooters in front of our columns. The colonel at the head of the regiment was much surprised at the commander-in-chief's order to throw out skirmishers. He had felt perfectly sure that there were other troops in front of him, and that the enemy must be at least 6 miles away. There was really nothing to be seen in front except a barren descent hidden by dense mist. Having given orders in the commander-in-chief's name to rectify this omission, Prince Andrew galloped back. Kutuzov, still in the same place, his stout body resting heavily in the saddle with the lassitude of age, sat yawning warily with closed eyes.
The troops were no longer moving, but stood with the butts of their muskets on the ground.
All right, he said to Prince Andrew, who turned to a general who, watch in hand, was saying it was time they started, as all the left flank columns had already descended.
Plenty of time, Your Excellency, muttered Kutuzov in the midst of a yawn. Plenty of time, he repeated.
Just then.
So Kutuzov does not, these people do not know what's happening. Like,
Yeah.
they don't know the French are there.
No, not at all.
And why has he stopped? When it's their turn to go? Kutuzov?
Like, they're trying to see if the 3rd Division of columns has passed. Like, they're trying to see where the other army is at.
Was it the 3rd that they were looking for?
Yeah. He says, go make your follow and see whether the 3rd Division has passed the village. Tell it to stop. And wait my orders. And then see if sharpshooters...
Right. Do we know why Kutuzov... Is it just the sounds of the firing that makes him nervous about what's happening?
I don't think he's nervous.
No, what I mean is... not nervous, but like that's making him hold everybody in place rather than proceeding with the plan, which is to march to their deaths.
It has something to do, like, I thought they were talking about the village and not being in the streets of the village.
Yes, that was a conversation that was also happening.
Oh, that's not related. I don't quite know.
Okay.
Just then, at a distance behind Kutuzov, was heard the sound of regiments saluting, and this sound rapidly came nearer along the whole extended line of the advancing Russian columns. Evidently, the person they were greeting was riding quickly. When the soldiers of the regiment in front of which Kutuzov was standing began to shout, he rode a little to one side and looked round with a frown. Along the road from Pratzen galloped what looked like a squadron of horsemen in various uniforms. 2 of them rode side by side in front, at full gallop. One, in a black uniform with white plumes in his hat, rode a bob-tailed chestnut horse. The other, who was in a white uniform, rode a black one.
What do we...
Why? These were the 2 emperors, followed by their suites. Kutuzov, affecting the manners of an old soldier at the front, gave the command, "Attention!" and rode up to the emperors with a salute. His whole appearance and manner were suddenly transformed. He put on the air of a subordinate who obeys without reasoning. With an affectation of respect which evidently struck Alexander unpleasantly, he rode up and saluted.
This unpleasant impression merely flitted over the young and happy face of the emperor like a cloud of haze across a clear sky that day than on the field of Olmutz where Bolkonsky had seen him for the first time abroad. But there was still the same bewitching combination of majesty and mildness in his fine grey eyes, and on his delicate lips the same capacity for varying expression, and the same prevalent appearance of good-hearted innocent youth.
At the Olmutz review he had seemed more majestic. Here he seemed brighter and more energetic. He was slightly flushed after galloping 2 miles, and reining in his horse he sighed restfully and looked round at the faces of his suite, young and animated as his own. Czartoryski, Novositsev, Prince Volkonsky, Stroganov, and the others. I tried to make it into something not that. And the others, all richly dressed, gay young men on splendid, well-groomed, fresh, only slightly heated horses, exchanging remarks and smiling, had stopped behind the emperor. The Emperor Francis, a rosy, long-faced young man, sat very erect on his handsome black horse, looking about him in a leisurely and preoccupied manner. He beckoned to one of his white adjutants and asked some questions. Most likely he is asking at what o'clock they started, thought Prince Andrew, watching his old acquaintance with a smile he could not repress as he recalled his reception at Brunn. In the Emperor's suites were the picked young orderly officers of the guard and line regiments, Russian and Austrian. Among them were grooms leading the Tsar's beautiful relay horses covered with embroidered cloths.
Did we just take a hard left into the fucking Silk Road?
Seriously. It's just like the Emperor show up and they're like...
Everything's just like really pretty and they're just hanging. What is happening?
Yeah, and they're like bored. They're like, oh, how long till this is over?
That is beautiful embroidery. As when a window is opened, a whiff of fresh air from the fields enters a stuffy room, so a whiff of youthfulness, energy, and confidence of success reached Kutuzov's cheerless staff with the galloping advent of all these brilliant young men.
Brilliant. Why aren't you beginning, Michael Ilyarovich? Said the Emperor Alexander hurriedly to Kutuzov, glancing courteously at the same time at the Emperor Francis.
I am waiting, Your Majesty, answered Kutuzov, bending forward respectfully.
The Emperor, frowning slightly, bent his ear forward as if he had not quite heard.
Waiting, Your Majesty, repeated Kutuzov. Prince Andrew noted that Kutuzov's upper lip twitched unnaturally as he said the word waiting. Not all the columns have formed up yet, Your Majesty.
The Tsar heard, but obviously did not like the reply. He shrugged his rather round shoulders and glanced at Novosiltsev, who was near him, as if complaining of Kutuzov.
You know, Michael Illarionovich, we are not on the Empress Fields where a parade does not begin till all the troops are assembled, said the Tsar with another glance at the Emperor Francis, as if inviting him, if not to join in, at least to listen to what he was saying. But the Emperor Francis continued to look about him and did not listen.
What's he looking at? That is just why I do not begin, sire, said Kutuzov in a resounding voice, apparently to preclude the possibility of not being heard, and again, something in his face twitched. That is just why I do not begin, sire, because we are not on parade and not on the Empress's field, said clearly and distinctly.
In the Emperor's suite, all exchanged rapid looks that expressed dissatisfaction and reproach. Old though he may be, he certainly should not speak like that, their glances seemed to say.
The Tsar looked intently and observantly into Kutuzov's eye, waiting to hear whether he would say anything more. But Kutuzov, with respectfully bowed head, seemed also to be waiting. The silence lasted for about a minute.
Jesus. However, if you command it, Your Majesty, said Kutuzov, lifting his head and again assuming his former tone of a dull, unreasoning, but submissive general.
He touched his horse, and having called Miloradovich, the commander of the column, gave him the order to advance.
The troops again began to move, and 2 battalions of the Novgorod and one of the Apsheron regiment, went forward past the Emperor.
As this Apsheron battalion marched by, the red-faced Miloradovich, without his greatcoat, with his orders on his breast and an enormous tuft of plumes in his cocked hat worn on one side, with its corners front and back, galloped strenuously forward, and with a dashing salute reined in his horse before the Emperor.
Said the Emperor.
Nous ferons ce qui sera dans notre possibilité, sire. Indeed, sire, we shall do everything it is possible to do, sire. He answered gaily, rising nevertheless ironic smiles among the gentlemen of the Tsar's suite by his poor French.
Miloradovich wheeled his horse sharply and stationed himself a little behind the Emperor. The Apsheron men, excited by the Tsar's presence, passed in step before the Emperors and their suites at a bold, brisk pace.
Lads, shouted Miloradovich in a loud, self-confident and cheery voice, obviously so elated by the sound of firing, by the prospect of battle, and by the sight of the gallant Apsherons. His comrades in Suvorov's time now passing so gallantly before the Emperors that he forgot the sovereign's presence. Lads, it's not the first village you've had to take, cried he.
Glad to do our best, shouted the soldiers.
Cool. The Emperor's horse started a sudden cry. Okay. Sudden cry? Alright. This horse that had carried the sovereign at reviews in Russia bore him also here on the field of Austerlitz, enduring the heedless blows of his left foot and pricking its ears at the sound of shots, just as it had done on the Empress's field, not understanding the significance of the firing, nor of the nearness of the Emperor Francis's black cob, nor of all that was being said, thought, and felt that day by its rider.
The Emperor turned with a smile to one of his followers and made a remark to him, pointing to the gallant Apsherons. What the hell just happened?
They're just all like... fingernails. And,
That's kind of what it seems like.
yeah.
They're like, why aren't we doing this? And they're like, all right, fine, do it. And then they
It
start
also
to do
sounds like there are a bunch of teenagers who are like, who's an old man?
Yeah.
Why is he saying things?
Why aren't we moving? We need to be moving. How do you feel?
I can keep going.
This is chapter 16. Kutuzov, accompanied by his adjutants, rode at a walking pace behind the carabiners. Carabiniers? What is that?
Carabiners? Carabiners.
It's not carabiners. It can't be.
I don't know if it is.
What's wrong?
Carabinier is a prince with a carabine. It might be. Carabinier. With a carabine, which is a kind of musket.
Okay.
When he had gone less than half a mile in the rear of the column, he stopped at a solitary, deserted house that had probably once been an inn. I know this is really basic, but I always wonder, like,
What are the people doing?
yeah, where do they go? Are they inside? They can't be. Where do they leave to?
I think they are there.
Ooh.
But it's part of that, like, the rules of warfare thing, is you don't, like, they're not the target.
Right. Citizens are not to be shot or killed.
Yeah, because they're not the army. You fight, your army fights with their army.
That's nice. Civil.
I mean, there's a shit ton of raping and pillaging
right.
all the time, so
Yeah.
I don't know to what extent it's observed, but I think that the people are there. They're just
Inside.
I think,
Inside.
like us.
Yeah.
I don't even think I stepped outside today.
You've just given up.
Yeah, I just gave up on the outside.
It's a nice day.
Was it?
I went for a hike.
A hike?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Where?
Ascot. It's like, I don't even know where it is. It's very hilly. Like this. Like this description. But people were telling me I should go into like the national forest actually. And then I was saying, oh, but it makes me nervous to leave my house. And the further afield you go, you know, like when you're like, oh, but I have to get, like, I just feel like my leash is very tightly knit now. Because I like need to know that I can get home. And the idea of going very far off into a forest makes me a little nervous.
Interesting.
And then they were like, oh no, but it's actually really, it's like, it'll be really soothing and relaxing to go forest walking. And I was like, will that outweigh the anxiety of being out of the house?
But you're already out of the house.
Yeah, but I did something much closer.
Oh.
So that I could scurry home if I needed to. I don't know what I think
what
is going to happen.
Need to scurry for.
I don't know.
Because
really
the
feel
danger
like,
is to.
I feel like we might be under war, like under siege. I don't know.
We're not.
I know we're not. But
like the worst case scenario is that you infected somebody else or they infected you, or both. None of those situations would require you to rush home.
right. Like, no, it didn't happen. And then like pull up the covers over my head.
Yeah. That's all you could do.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I know what you mean though about the leash sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Carabiniers.
Thank you. When he had gone less than half a mile in the rear of the column, he stopped at a solitary, deserted house that had probably once been an inn, where two roads parted. Both of them led downhill, and troops were marching along both.
The fog had begun to clear, and enemy troops were already dimly visible about a mile and a half off on the opposite heights. Down below, on the left, the firing became more distinct. Kutuzov had stopped and was speaking to an Austrian general. Prince Andrew, who was a little behind, looking at them, turned to an adjutant to ask him for a field glass.
Look, look, said this adjutant, looking now at the troops in the distance. Down the hill before him, it's the French.
Who?
Oh, right.
The two generals and the adjutant took hold of the field glass, trying to snatch it from one another. The expression on all their faces suddenly changed to one of horror. The French were supposed to be a mile and a half away, but had suddenly and unexpectedly appeared just in front of us.
It's the enemy? No. Yes, see, it is. For certain, but how is that?
Can't you tell from all the shooting?
It's different voices. I don't know if the shooting is like to distract them. Because there's like some people down there, but I think the majority of their forces are elsewhere. Or were. Maybe it will become clear as we read.
It had better. With the naked eye, Prince Andrew saw below them to the right, not more than 500 paces from where Kutuzov was standing, a dense French column, great, coming up to meet the Apsharans.
Here it is. The decisive moment has arrived. My turn has come, thought Prince Andrew, and striking his horse, he rode up to Kutuzov.
The Apsharans must be stopped, Your Excellency, cried he. But at that very instant, a cloud of smoke...
This moment.
Again, he picked the instant where something else was happening. But at that very instant, he's not going to get no credit for calling it either, because it was too late if you say it right when everything explodes. Yeah. But at that very instant, a cloud of smoke spread all around. Firing was heard quite close at hand, and a voice of naive terror barely 2 steps from Prince Andrew shouted, "Brothers, all is lost!" Oh. And at this, as if at a command, everyone began to run.
Confused and ever-increasing crowds were running back to where 5 minutes before the troops had passed the emperors. Not only would it have been difficult to stop that crowd, it was even impossible not to be carried back with it oneself. Bolkonsky only tried not to lose touch with it, and looked around bewildered and unable to grasp what was happening in front of him. Nesvitsky, with an angry face, red and unlike himself, was shouting to Kutuzov that if he did not ride away at once, he would certainly be taken prisoner. Kutuzov remained in the same place and without answering drew out a handkerchief. Blood was flowing from his cheek. Prince Andrew forced his way to him.
"You are wounded?" he asked, hardly able to master the trembling of his lower jaw.
"The wound is not here, it is there," said Kutuzov, pressing the handkerchief to his wounded cheek and pointing to the fleeing soldiers. "Stop them," he shouted, and at the same moment, probably realizing that it was impossible to stop them, spurred his horse.
A wave of the flying mob caught him and came back with it.
The troops were running in such a dense mass that once surrounded by them, it was difficult to get out again. One was shouting, "Get on! Why are you hindering us?" Another in the same place turned round and fired in the air. A third was striking the horse Kutuzov himself rode. Having by a great effort got away to the left from that flood of men, Kutuzov, with his suite diminished by more than half, rode toward a sound of artillery fire nearby. Having forced his way out of the crowd of fugitives, Prince Andrew, trying to keep near Kutuzov, saw on the slope of the hill, amid the smoke, a Russian battery that was still firing and Frenchmen running toward it. Higher up stood some Russian infantry, neither moving forward to protect the battery nor backward with the fleeing crowd. A mounted general separated himself from the infantry and approached Kutuzov. Of Kutuzov's suite, only 4 remained. They were all pale and exchanged looks in silence.
"Stop those wretches," gasped Kutuzov to the regimental commander, pointing to the flying soldiers. But at that instant, as if to punish him for those words, bullets flew hissing across the regiment and across Kutuzov's suite like a flock of birds.
The French had attacked the battery and, seeing Kutuzov, were firing at him. After this volley, the regimental commander clutched at his leg, several soldiers fell, and a second lieutenant who was holding the flag let it fall from his hands. It swayed and fell, but caught on the muskets of the nearest soldiers. The soldiers started firing without orders.
Oh, groaned Kutuzov despairingly and looked around. "Bolkonsky," he whispered, his voice trembling from the consciousness of the feebleness of age. "Bolkonsky," he whispered, pointing to the disordered battalion and at the enemy. "What's that?"
And before he had finished speaking, Prince Andrew, feeling tears of shame and anger choking him, had already leapt from his horse and run to the standard.
"Forward, lads!" he shouted in a voice piercing as a child's.
"Here it is," thought he, seizing the staff of the standard and hearing with pleasure the whistle of bullets evidently aimed at him. Several soldiers fell.
"Hurrah!" shouted Prince Andrew, and scarcely able to hold up the heavy standard, he ran forward with full confidence that the whole battalion would follow him.
And really, he only ran a few steps alone. One soldier moved, and then another, and soon the whole battalion ran forward, shouting, "Hurrah!" and overtook him. A sergeant of the battalion ran up and took the flag that was swaying from its weight in Prince Andrew's hands, but he was immediately killed. Prince Andrew again seized the standard, and dragging it by the staff, ran on with the battalion. In front he saw artillerymen, some of whom were fighting, while others, having abandoned their guns, were running toward him. He also saw French infantry soldiers who were seizing the artillery horses and turning the guns round. Prince Andrew and the battalion were already within 20 paces of the cannon. He heard the whistle of bullets above him unceasingly, and to right and left of him soldiers continually groaned and dropped. But he did not look at them. He looked only at what was going on in front of him, at the battery. He now saw clearly the figure of a red-haired gunner with his shako knocked awry, pulling I know, I thought of that too. Ari. Pulling one end of a mop while a French soldier tugged at the other. He could distinctly see the distraught yet angry expression on the faces of these two men, who evidently did not realize what they were doing.
What were they doing?
They're firing? I don't know.
What are they about? thought Prince Andrew as he gazed at them. Why doesn't the red-haired gunner run away as he is unarmed? Why doesn't the Frenchman stab him? He will not get away before the Frenchman remembers his bayonet and stabs him.
And really another French soldier, trailing his musket, ran up to the struggling men, and the fate of the red-haired gunner, who had triumphantly secured the mop and still did not realize what awaited him, was about to be decided. But Prince Andrew did not see how it ended. It seemed to him as though one of the soldiers near him hit him on the head with the full swing of a bludgeon. It hurt a little, but the worst of it was that the pain distracted him and prevented his seeing what he had been looking at.
What's this? Am I falling? My legs are giving way, thought he, and fell on his back. He opened his eyes, hoping to see how the struggle of the Frenchman with the gunners ended, whether the red-haired gunner had been killed or not, and whether the cannon had been captured or saved, but he saw nothing. Above him there was now nothing but sky, the lofty sky, not clear yet, still, immeasurably lofty, with grey clouds gliding slowly across it. How quiet, peaceful, and solemn. Not at all as I ran. What? Not at all.
Yeah.
He ran, shouting and fighting, not at all as the gunner and the Frenchman with frightened and angry faces struggled for the mop. How differently do those clouds glide across that lofty, infinite sky. How was it I did not see that lofty sky before, and how happy I am to have found it at last. Yes, all is vanity, all falsehood except that infinite sky. There is nothing, nothing but that. But even it does not exist. There is nothing but quiet and peace. Thank God. He's had his Jim Carrey moment.
I mean, I kind of like it. How chaotic their minds are.
Yeah.
And how they have these like bursts of insight into what's actually important. Or not important, but like their like presence to life. In these very extreme, intense moments.
You like the brief moments of clarity?
I like how everyone's thoughts are so scrambled.
I like it too. I think it's just good writing.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to keep going, or
I kind of want to know what happens. Has he fallen?
he fell?
I mean, I know he literally fell, but like, what's going to happen?
What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen?
Is it a long chapter?
No, it's just getting to the end of the book.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 18 is after that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was the end of the book. But that 17 was the end of the book. 17 looks long.
Yeah. I think maybe let's leave it on a cliffhanger.
Okay.
That's what I say.
I mean, he has to survive.
He has to. He does, because he's in all 6 episodes.
We're at 24%.
That is that good or bad? I mean, we have read.
Do you feel like we've been reading a lot?
750 pages. No.
Like, do you feel like we've read a lot, or do you not? It depends on how you perceive what's past.
Yeah.
Because we only have to do what we did 3 more times, but it depends on how long that
I feel
felt.
like we could do this. Like at the beginning of this quarantine, I was like, are we going to have enough time to finish the book? And now I'm like, oh yes, we will.
Oh, yeah.
If anything, maybe we should have picked a longer book.
We need to pick more books. It's the thing.
No, I think it's going by okay.
Yeah, so
Quite
it's just
quickly.
this, like, it's this, however many, 4 more times.
Yeah.
No, 4.
I think it's going to be really interesting when we're at the end of
3
this.
more times.
I'll be like, here we are.
At the end of what?
At the end of this book, I don't know where we will be.
This book or this book? Not book 3. You know.
Oh, no, I mean like the full Monty. I wonder what our appearance will be.
who we'll be.
Whether we will have Jim carried ourselves.
Hopefully we're not dead.
Well, yeah, hopefully. Hopefully there's still 2 of us.
That just occurred to me. No. It's
I
our
went to the
moment.
dark.
No, this is our moment.
No, not my
I can
moment.
feel it.
Oh, it keeps not being his moment.
I don't know. That was kind of his moment.
He took up the standard. He was like, ah.
When he was running off, sure the people behind him, I was like, I don't think this is gonna
How
happen.
is he not dead?
But it did
I
happen.
always think of that. Like, how does anyone survive anything? In
But
those
that's
moments?
true in stuff. In narrative, is just
But the main
just not right
character,
here.
pretty much. Yeah,
Unlikely.
I know.
I think that when people are running from one car to the other, you know, like from behind one car, like sprinting to just like, okay, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When they're like taking
I think of that
cover.
too. Yeah, I was thinking of the Matrix when they go into the building to rescue Morpheus, and everyone's shooting, and then they dodge to the walls, and they're still firing. I'm always like, you could so easily get shot. All of these times,
That's the Matrix, though.
I was just thinking like, oh, they're like, I'm too fast to get shot. If I'm moving, it's too fast for them to shoot me. But I was like, oh, but like you shoot ahead of the person you're seeing, right? That's the trick. I don't know.
I don't think that you're
That's the
asking the right
Matrix.
person
I should be asking someone who
as to
shoots guns.
how you shoot people. I mean, yeah, there's that idea of skate to where the puck is going, which people are fond of. But it's like they're too fast even for them. The Matrix is like the only example I can think of that actually has an
Where
explanation.
it's like, oh, maybe that's right.
Yeah, but like in every other shootout scene of all time, they should all be dead.
Kind of. Or at least injured. Just like mistakes happen.
Kutuzov got shot in his cheek.
His cheek.
Or something happened to him.
His eye. His other eye.
Oh no. Is that why he was like, what's that? Talking about the enemy?
Maybe you can see it.
What was that? What was the moment where he was like, Bolkonsky, what is that?
What is it?
What is that?
I don't know what it was. I also don't know who the red-haired dude. I don't know what was happening there.
It's one of these like slices of life equivalents that happens in this book a lot, where it's not a slice of life, but it's like these like little instants get captured and magnified. So basically, he saw a struggle between someone on his side and a French person, and he was like, "Why isn't he more aware that there's a French guy right next to him?" Because they were trying to get control of the cannon or something.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Wait, why is the French person not just stabbing him? They're right there. Maybe he's forgotten about his bayonet." So it's just like a ton of thoughts, in 1 second. And then he sees someone else come up to them. And then he's like, "Oh, that guy's done for now, surely. The one who was absent to the threat."
Yeah.
Ooh.
And then he fell. And he didn't get to see what happened.
Yeah, but it's because he was absent to the threat.
See? I just got that. You got it, and then I got it through your getting it. It's good. It's good there's two people reading this book.
I know, right?
I'm starting to understand why I don't know what happens in Anna Karenina.
Yeah? I get that.
Yeah, and it's a miracle I know what does happen in Harry Potter.
Really?
A little bit.
Why is it a miracle? Just because you retained it?
Yeah. Because I was younger. I had no cell phone then.
Have you ever seen that video that's like a YouTube video of a girl? It reminds me of us, I guess. Telling the plot of Star Wars, who's never seen it.
No, what is this?
This girl's never seen Star Wars, and her friend makes her like try to say what she thinks happens in it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of weird things about it. One is like, it's amazing how much how much like certain things have clearly like penetrated her psyche, because she knows a bunch of stuff considering she hasn't seen the movie.
Right.
But there's all these weird things that she doesn't know, and you're like, it's cute.
I like this.
It's kind of like when we try to figure out what happened in what we actually read the previous day, where we're like, and then was it someone? Was it that? Who was that?
A fun car game I like to play on road trips is just telling the stories of movies.
Wow, how is this a game?
It's a game because you have to be entertaining while you do it.
That's really funny. We need to hang this up. That's not.
Goodbye. We're doing a new thing now.
But that's kind of like what those pitch videos are. Remember we saw a pitch video for Cats? That was like really funny.
But that's like written and it's good. It's funny when you have like, and especially if it's a movie that you don't know that very well.
I think you should do this for us.
Right now.
What happens in the bridges of Madison County?
Oh gosh. See, like I think that's a fun game. I know it's not a game. It's just like people. I don't know.
It's just a weird activity.
Yeah, it's just
but
a thing
I like
to do
it.
to pass the time.
I like it.
It's good.
And
it quite passes the time.
Yeah, we need to hang up and watch the YouTube video of the girl who's never seen Star Wars.
Okay.
Telling Star Wars.
So we're gonna do.
Okay, you've been dismissed. We're being dismissed.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.